Hello, welcome to another installment of the Quality and Practice Minute. In this installment of the Quality and Practice Minute, we're going to continue our discussion of the cost of quality model. In this particular segment, we're going to talk about internal failure costs. So in the previous two, within the inspection activity and prevention costs, there are costs associated with preventing defects and preventing defects from getting out to the customer. So that's the good side of quality dealt with. Now we're transitioning over to the poor side of quality. So just to review what we talked about in the initial overview of cost of quality, there's an inherent struggle between quality and manufacturing in that quality is charged with protecting the customer from defects and variation, and manufacturing is charged with producing and shipping as much product as the customer needs and wants, and that benefits the company and that it generates revenue. So cost of quality is a way to overcome that inherent conflict, to build a common language and common decision-making criteria about those things that come into conflict. Talked about there being two primary schools of thought regarding cost of quality models, so economic conformance and quality is free. Economic conformance can be summed up to say there is a minimum cost point beyond which additional costs of prevention and appraisal are not economically wise, and then that would cause overall costs to rise. And then the quality is free approach, which says that the cost of failure and the cost of preventing that failure will never intersect in the model when all costs are considered. That's the important statement to remember about that. In this edition, we will deep dive on the poor side of quality, specifically internal failure. So you've seen this chart before. Now we're on the left side of the chart talking about poor quality and internal failure costs specifically. Remember that the underlying economics of the cost of quality model are that the costs of defects are significantly higher than the costs of preventing those defects when all costs are considered. I mentioned that previously. Costs increase as product or services moves to the customer. Finding the defect when it is still in-house is cheaper than finding it at the customer. We talked about that from a supply chain perspective in previous sessions. Defects at the customer are highest of all because all possible costs have been incurred. Finding defects in-house requires some inspection activity. This is appraisal. We talked about this last time. We need to be careful to distinguish costs of the inspection-related activity, which is appraisal, from costs associated with defects that are found in that appraisal activity. That is internal failure. The reason we need to distinguish between those things and not lump them together is because internal failure costs are higher than appraisal costs because they include the cost of material and all the time that's been associated with getting it to the point in the process where it's found to be defective, and maybe any rework that's associated with that to make it a good product. So as we discussed previously, appraisal are those costs associated with the inspection activity. Internal failure are costs associated with the results of that inspection activity. The typical largest bucket of costs associated with internal failure is what we would typically call scrap or rework. Sometimes reworked product can't be reworked and it has to be scrapped and disposed of or remade, consumed, returned into raw material and remade. So it depends on the product and the industry that you're talking about. So typically the largest category is scrap. Other potential costs associated with this category include setup costs, because if you find an internal defect and perhaps you've changed over the line to make a different product and now you've found a defective product that you need to remake, then you're going to have to go through another setup of that line in order to remake that product. Some products can be reworked. additional material and labor costs, and lost order cost if the order ends up being late because of internal failure defects or scrap defects that cause you to not be able to ship product on time. If this interests you, if you're interested in learning more about cost of quality, you can check out my short lesson on cost of quality through my on-demand content link on the website, qualityandpractice.solutions, or reach out to us so you can get more details, or we can have a chat on how we might be able to help you on your journey to establish a cost of quality set for your business. You can reach us at info@qualityandpractice.solutions. Thank you for joining me today and for this Quality and Practice Minute. We'll see you next time.